Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, and today's video is going to be all about me reading from this notebook. I said in my last video with the syllabus in it that I would read from my notebook from my listening class, but I had this notebook. This notebook was the one closest by, and it's actually notes, I think, mostly from a class I took in college called Religious and Secular Modernities, which was about the concept of the secular and the religious and the history of those forces. And I was kind of just flipped through this notebook, and most of the notes are actually about a paper I wrote. So I think for that class, I actually wrote a paper on the TV show Keeping Up with the Kardashians. And the point of the paper was to kind of point out the religious or spiritual certain mechanisms of television. And I thought that show would have been was like a really good example or like case study because of its focus on a family and because of how commercial they are as well. Like, they sell products, but they're also selling family, and it made me think of religion and secular in a certain way. And so I used the Kardashians really as just, I really could use a lot of different shows because I was interested in school mostly about like fandom and audiences and fans and how like culture works and how like groups of fans have certain ways of being that like are similar to like traditional religion, I guess, to put it simply. Anyway, I haven't read this notebook yet, so I'm kind of like blind reading it here. So yeah, if you're watching, subscribe, give me a thumbs up. You know you love my channel, so this video is just, me reading this notebook. If you want to hear that, then keep watching. Okay, so I'm just going to go through it page by page, I guess. Is my mic working? Yeah, okay. I also have some like funny background music. I don't know if you could hear it. Anyway, there goes my air purifier. Okay, let's just read the notebook. That's what the video promises. It says, Keeping Up with the Kardashians, Season 8, Episode 8, at minute 4:30. Quote, I want to be a goddess. Quote, let's go to Greece and be like gods. And at minute 18, second 30, quote, this chapter in my life. That was just important to point out here, like, how their show is kind of like a book of their life. Okay, about Kim's divorce, quote, I've been praying about it all morning. Kris Jenner. I think I just wrote down quotes where they mentioned religion because their family is actually really Christian. Okay, the interstitial music sounds like electronic instrumental karaoke of late 2000s pop music in the style of Katy Perry. At minute 36, I think your word is everything, and Rob gave his word, and he's not here. Brody. At minute 36 and 40 seconds, Chloe says, the fact that the mayor is here greeting us with flowers, I feel like royalty. At minute 37:50, anyone who paid slight attention would notice there's an obvious voiceover paired with clever camera edits to insert and rewrite the dialogue. It's not to necessarily fool the audience, but to progress the story. I guess I just pointed that out to show that how narrative is manipulated through like techniques of storytelling, like editing and piecing together parts that weren't said in real life. At minute 42 and 15 seconds, the music punctuates the edits and the story, and the music is heavily relied upon to set the mood and to announce the shot changes and energy shifts. Kardashian exposure. Find the number of episodes, number of magazines, number of products, number of viewers, number of followers. Kardashian history, family history, dad, OJ, mom, Bruce, Armenia, sex tape, controversy, look into this, catalyst for fame, look into this, internet era, post Paris Hilton, and creation of show. It's on E! And Ryan Connection, produced by Ryan Seacrest. The mom, Chris, is a producer. I think I'll just kind of, the beginning of the essay had to be like, you know, what is the Kardashians for someone who's never really interacted with it or only has a really faint understanding of it. So that was like Kardashian history section. I'm just making bullet points what I should say. And then what is the secular and sacred to me? And then I wrote blurry distinction, operate similarly, do similar work, use media for messages, Protestant secularism like Weber, early class readings, how can I define these realms as opposition? I guess that was just constructing territory through refrain, song, repetition. Repeated action creates place. A question, can we see TV shows as religious? Do showrunners have awareness of their religious impact? Can reality TV be seen as a sermon of the secular? I guess that's like what I thought the question my essay would ask. Durkheim and the sacred and profane. Protestant, very DIY, outer worldly doers. Protestantism is very focused on like outwardly manifesting. Is the pop world a matriarchy? I wrote, sound obliterates the public-private divide of the secular. So like this idea that sound, like recorded sound through a TV, it's penetrative into your space. And there is like, you know, sound kind of blurs divisions between inside and outside and creates unity among different people or places or things. And so that's why I think I wrote sound obliterates the public-private divide of the secular. And then it has an arrow and it says, TV touch us through sound. Images appear on screen, but sounds appear in the air and in our living rooms. Images also touch us because images are photons travel. But there is something different between sound waves and light waves, even though they're both technically electromagnetic waves. I think sound is technically, it's at least an interference wave. Anyway, sound and light actually are really similar. They're both physical, they both can touch, so I guess there's something different about sound, of course. Okay, then I wrote Foucault. Everyone desires because desire is installed onto the body through power systems. Great. Danish cartoon book. Signifier, signified, object, subject, all one thing. Religion is not a choice, page 75. The Danish cartoon book was a book we read about a Danish cartoon that caused religious controversy. I don't remember. Okay, then I wrote political emotions. And then I wrote maybe in a circle around this. Rousseau dash, society needs a civil religion to remain stable and to continue sacrificial projects like national defense. That is so true. And then I wrote Kim Kardashian visits army photos, like install photos of Kim visiting the army, and then a quote like, society needs civil religion to remain stable and to continue sacrificial projects like national defense or like medicine projects. You know, they need to, wow, okay. And then I wrote Kant dash, civil religion doesn't need to be coercively imposed to be efficacious. Cool. A passionate and generous attitude toward the frailties of human beings is a linchpin of public culture. That is so true. What we need as an attitude, then, is a sense of common fate. Multiverse theory dash, a good way to describe how many people and their worlds overlap and connect to create a world that is never truly complete, but together in difference. Cora, mother, that into which all things are inscribed. Keeping up with the Kardashians, a neutral plastic material giving birth to the visible world. Okay. Lucratus Epicurus dash, do not abandon God, but abandon God as one who creates the universe mayhem plus uniformity equals non-chaos. Nicholas of Cusa dash, nothing is at the center of the universe. God is absolute infinite negativity. I think I agree with that, as God is absolute infinite negativity, insofar as I believe there's an immaterial spiritual other side to things that exists and is as real and made of components that maybe even mirror those of what we can experience as existing. And so that, you know, God is that which is can never be known. Always on the other side. I don't know. Anyway, location 2099, because I was using a Kindle and there weren't pages. It gave me like a location number. God is equally of all things like a hologram. Nobody is closer or farther from the divine. So true. Bruno dash, the void is not nothing, but the space in which worlds come to be. I agree that the void is not nothing. Okay, then I wrote Ghosts of Futures Past. This is a book I read about spiritualism and about photography. And I thought there's something interesting about there's something about spiritualism which imbues the photograph with kind of otherworldly power, divine power, and there's something true about a divine power in photography and how photography collapses space and time in a certain way, and it also it's an external memory that's very precise visually. Anyway, spiritualism, 1800s, rise of print media, young girl mediums, need for public mourning, connected to women's rights movements, allowed women to make money and have more equal rights. Historical chronicling creates what is viewed as culture and counterculture. Arrow, keeping up with the Kardashians secures a culture through incessant chronicling. And then I wrote When God Talks Back. This is another book I read about evangelicalism and hearing the word of God as truth through the Bible. Participatory theory of mind. Prayer as labor. Viewing TV as labor. Prayer creates territory. Larry Rickles, The Case on California, a Site of Cultural Productions, page 180 to 181. Reimagining life in accordance to Scripture, the quotidian gets imbued with the imaginary, helps to stitch the past to present to future. Paradox is the entryway to all gnosis. Gnosis is like spiritual belief, I think, as opposed to agnostic, you know what I mean? Let's just look it up. Yeah, knowledge of spiritual mysteries. Okay. Great. Jerry Falwell is a book about language of fundamentalists. Page 14 and 16 mentions direct mail, shopping centers, radio and TV, all in the name of God. Page 21, fundamentalists helped non-fundamentalists see themselves as modern, superior, progressive, and thus secure the modern secular state as we know it. Does Keeping Up with the Kardashians do this in reverse? Is what I asked. It's interesting, yeah. There's, the 80s had a lot of televangelism, and so I thought there is a really cool parallel we could draw between, like, televangelism and telesecularism or something. Page 37, Principle of Conversion, Formalized Rhetoric Techniques. TV has formalized techniques. The edit, the sound edit, the commercial, the confession booth, catchphrases, jingles, you name it. Page 38, witnessing, conviction, conversion. These are all like terms you could use to describe evangelical Christianity, or to talk about evangelical Christianity. Witnessing, conviction, and conversion, and they mean specific things, I guess, in that system. But I wrote a line and I said, does TV do this, or how does TV do? TV does this, how? Question, do the Kardashians remind us of our place in their narrative like a fundamental preacher would? The answer to that is yes, because of I came to find that they rely on external media beyond their show, like tabloids, press, gossip sites, entertainment news, to sort of include the audience, give the audience a place, kind of, like more place than just their show. Page 55. Keeping Up with the Kardashians plus the Bible. Both stories are about family. Page 59. More on conviction. Page 69. Circus metaphor. Religious plus business mixed equals circus. My view. Oh no. Harding, the author, Susan Harding, says, discourses inhabit us and change us, and thoughts change material worlds. She learned that through studying fundamental evangelicalism, that discourses inhabit us and change us, and thoughts change material worlds. Then I wrote my view, arrow, no longer is the debate in terms of secular versus religion. Rather, these are both multiple worlds that are arbitrary and overdetermined. Okay? T.F. Baker raised a family on television. Oh, Tammy Faye Baker. She raised a family on television. Christian versus secular TV. Women need a trademark feature in TV. Sex-positive spirituality goes well with television. Liturgy is the root word of liturgy is labor. I wrote. And then I wrote Preciado, Flesh Becomes Code, Kim Kardashian. Then I wrote Falwell plus Lerman, Homes Are Sacralized, and TV and the Couch. And then I wrote Harding, Televangelism. Okay. These are pretty good notes so far. This is actually so long. This is going to be like hours long, or an hour long, maybe longer. So just so you know, let's keep going. Spiritual, maybe I'll do less commenting. If I'll try to comment less. Practice what you preach, Kyle. Here we go. Spiritual nature of all beings in the absence of strong, organized religions. Spirituality is vacating former spiritual institutions. A medium conducts spiritual knowledge. Is pop culture an area to invest spiritual feelings? Stars are like prophets. All culture and media conducts spirituality because media is like a mirror. Humans must make contact with things beyond and outside themselves. To process any information, you take a leap of faith. Reality show is how evangelicals view the Bible. Women's popular media is a spirit channel in which to worship gods and goddesses. Dead people talking to dead people, helping each other get through this life, creating a workable fantasy. Is the popular a spiritualistic home medium practice? Goddesses who offer another form of womanhood, offering a space-time for people to model their identity from. Business, the public self, selling appearances, sex, family, private secrets, belief in God. But then they let cameras into their home, literally sacrificing their lives for the sake of their business-art. Business as art equals a religion. Keeping Up with the Kardashians balances religious and secular as part of their 100% religious life act. All information made is information known. No information that can be known, crossed out. They present their life upon the altar of television. Kim is the body given up for you. It connects people across space-time and makes coherent knowledges. It's like a 30-minute guided prayer. The sound from the TV touches and transforms bodies. People listen in an act of conviction. Women's bodies become containers of a set of anxieties over basically our human fact of being, which is our creaturely dependence on other beings. We all come from women's bodies. Well, I guess we don't all come from women's bodies. However, Keeping Up with the Kardashians itself is a show about women bodies becoming containers of a set of anxieties over basically our human fact of being. In Keeping Up with the Kardashians, women's bodies become powerful psychic representative of the vulnerabilities we can never get away with, but which fantasize avoiding at all costs. I don't know how I wrote that or what that even means. Multiple secularisms. Religious and secular divide is weakening. TV channels represent multiple secularisms. Religions deal with gender, like the women's mosque movement. Kardashians offer a goddess prototype, a female secular construction of explicit worship? ? I don't know if I ended up putting that stuff in my paper. I don't think I did. Reality TV, Sermon of the Secular. Use episode 1. Is television a secular domain? Is religion a private domain? Religion on TV? Binary. Merging on TV. Evangelism is of the show and of the books in Rapture Culture. Rapture Culture is a book I kind of read. Jesus and the Marketplace. Oh, that's like something I need to read. I'm going to have to write that down, actually. Wait. Jesus and the Marketplace. In quotes, I'm going to search that. Oh, I don't know if I... Oh, well, I'll come back to that. I just thought that was really... I just am interested in that still. Jesus in the Marketplace. Because I had like a t-shirt business where I sold Jesus t-shirts. Okay, I still have it. Anyway, Calgary Church is one of the evangelical books of Falwell. The Sin, Sexual Regulation and the Limits of Religious Tolerance. I think these are like books I thought I should, or articles or books I thought I should read. Notes on Jacobson and Pellegrini. Jacobson and Pellegrini wrote something about secularism. They offer a paradox. If secularism is, quote, supposed to be discourse of universal influence precisely because it was free from the particularities of religion, then how come, quote, the world secular calendar, the calendar of global finance and world politics, unquote, is specifically marked as Christian time, 2,000 years after Christ? They use this paradox to explore far-reaching inquiries into how, quote, the religious and the secular become constituted by one another as modernity. To me, secularism is a religion unto itself with many interpretations. Just like there are many religions, there are also many secularisms. Who are the preachers of the secular? Does it have icons of worship like formal religions do? Key elements of secularization narrative. A secularization narrative, here are the key elements. Rationalization, reason over dogma, enlightenment, pursuit of enlightenment through reason, not dogma, social structure differentiation. The church and the state are structurally separated to perform different functions. Freedom. Autonomy implies transcendence over constraints. Rationalization is tied to freedom from religious constraints. Privatization. Religion becomes privatized and in the most extreme secular narrative disappears in any importance. Universalism. Reason is universal. Modernization and progress. All the elements come to announce progress over the past. I hate that. Secularization, boo. Page 9. Secularization both is and is not happening. God both is and is not happening. Page 8 to 9. Secularism as a discourse introduces a set of binaries. Progress versus atavism. Universal versus particular. Freedom versus slavery. How can we intervene in this, I ask? I'm taking secularism, like Jacobson and Pellegrini, in a Foucauldian sense, a set of bodily regulations material and linguistic practices that work across multiple institutions like television. Secularism works across institutions like mainstream media, civil life, ceremony, and the market. Page 10. The production of the category of religion as we know it today is part of the production of secularism. Yes, okay. My idea. The Kardashians can use the secular medium of TV without contradiction to their private religious practice because Protestantism is implicated in the version of the secular that they profit from. Question mark. I wrote next to this. Pop culture is so religious that it becomes ignored by these operating in rational fields such as the academy. Question mark. Pop culture is the religious expression of the secular. Page 14. Casanova. Not every expression of public religion is conservative. Do Keeping Up with the Kardashians question the deep private-public split of the United States Protestant secularism? Because they're liberal. The Kardashians are kind of liberal in a certain way. They're liberal. How are they liberal? I don't feel like just being naked on TV makes you liberal. But there is something not conservative about that. However, I don't know how I feel about that anymore. Okay, page 14 of Casanova argues, while secularization may divide religion from the state, the division does not necessarily entail removal from the public. Okay. Page 14 and 15 say, conservatives advocate religion without acknowledging the import of liberal values into it. Secularists deny the import of religion to public life. Does Keeping Up with the Kardashians find an opening for this double position and interrupt this binary rhetoric? Page 15. Secularism implies that the very idea that politics can be simply divided between a religious right and a secular left are mistaken. Page 16. To find openings, we must question received understandings. A main point of secularism on page 17 and 18 quotes, secularism is not somehow religion in disguise, but it is a separate formation, but a formation that develops in relation to religion. I guess this kind of goes against what I was trying to say earlier, where I was like, oh, secularism is just religion, low-key. But it's not, I guess, according to these smart people. Okay. If secularism is constituted in relation to religious formations, then secularism is not the universal discourse emanating from Euro-Enlightenment, but it is in fact multiple, as are religions multiple. Okay. Page 30 and 31. The body as a site of secular transformation. Foucault and body disciplines. Modern disciplines of the body have served to connect the laboring body at once to new forms and practices of capital and new forms and practices of religious life, and, importantly, to do so in ways that naturalize all three: the disciplined body, the market as secular site of freedom, and religion as morality. Although secular in name, these body regulations are religious in form. 34. McGarry uses ghosts to offer resources for reimagining the future in the present, alternate ways of being in time and space, family history as a documentary TV show, recording and editing one's life like the Kardashians. What models of secularism are already in place to imagine new ways of being? Turning your life into a show? Samantra's essay. The presumption that secular discourse is supposed to liberate women may only reinforce both colonial domination and secular patriarchy. Keeping Up with the Kardashians demonstrates this to a queer extreme. Secularism can have effects that both resist and extend sexism, and it makes women's issues complicated. Page 39, conclusion about secular possibility in thinking with, but also outside the traditional secularization narrative. Okay, wow, this is not going to be one video, actually. Let's do... I'm going to keep going, but the next section's pretty long. I might just have to randomly stop, or I should just read it all, like, it's only been 30 minutes, right? We have long attention spans. Okay, this part's called When God Talks Back. It's another book I read. I kind of mentioned it earlier. The God is intensely human in this music, and the singer wants him so badly that the lyrics sound like a teenage fan's crazed longing for a teen idol she can touch. Oh, this is something I used in another paper I wrote. I don't know if this has anything to do actually with the Kardashians. And these are just quotes from this book. People tend to call themselves evangelical to signal something about their own sense of spirituality and their commitment to using it to change the world around them. They are asserting they want Jesus to be as real in their lives as the Gospels say that he was in the lives of the disciples. Data suggests that at least a quarter of all Americans follow a faith in which the Christian God is understood to be intimately and personally present. Folk songs crept in. Catholic took Latin out. Many of the top chart songs of the era were spiritual. Some were overtly Christian. How does God become real for people? How are sensible people able to believe in an invisible being who has a demonstrable effect on their lives? 60s counterculture made a shift in the understanding of the Christian God. God retains his holy majesty, but becomes a companion, a buddy to play with. What we have seen in the last 4 to 5 decades is a democratization of God, I and thou into you and me, and the democratization of intense spiritual experience. Anyone can learn how to hear God speak, even the most ordinary of men. The combination of Jesus' intensely human nature and his tangible supernaturalism creates a mystery, and that mystery is the heartbeat of the Gospel's narrative. Keeping up with the Kardashians' mystery is at the heart of their intrigue, both real and supernatural. Lorman studies an evangelical sect that believes in hearing God directly through practice and focus of the mind. Theory of mind is a theory in which children learn to understand that what people know changes how they... Theory of mind. Children learn to understand that what people know changes how they behave. New Christian theory of mind is a participatory theory of mind and sees the world mind boundary as porous. And then I wrote, I think this can be wielded for good. It's like God uses a radio when he speaks to us. 80% of Americans say that they pray to God. 76% say that prayer is an important part of their daily life. And evangelicals' near magical God is an expression of God's transformation in modernity. This modern God is hyper-real, realer than real, so real that you are left suspended between what is real and what is your imagination. Practice is not passive. Prayer groups and structures can generate intense feeling and have explicit features. The interweaving blurs the boundary between what is external and what is within all language, and what is within all language. All language does this, of course. All language is given from without, but is used within as inner speech. Intelligent absorption scale has 34 statements that one marks as true or false. Doesn't measure religiosity per se, instead it describes experiences of nature and color and music. It measures hypnotic susceptibility or likelihood someone will respond to hypnosis. About a third of the normal population are high hypnotizable. It's a talent, as seen by evangelicals, to be skilled in prayer, to enter into states of high absorption. The higher the score in the intelligent absorption scale, the more likely to immerse oneself into rich imaginative worlds. When you get absorbed into something, it seems more real to you, and you and your world seem different than before. That's what I would hope to do if I ever had a pop show. I would hope it would create that experience. I'm just going to type in Google this. I think it's important for me to remember Telegen Absorption Scale. Great. There's articles about this. Okay. Quote, more quotes. The history of American spiritualism is much more than a cultural footnote. Weber claims that capitalist secularism disenchanted the world, but the American 19th century shows that magic itself was not so much eliminated as rechanneled. American Protestants did not merely replace or reject religious impulse, they sublimated it and diffused it into the everyday. This transformation was intimately connected with what historians called the feminization of American religion. Oh, it's so interesting. Keeping Up with the Kardashians is congruent with this practice to an extent. They wield media and become mediums. Punchline at the end of the section. Some see television audiences as brain dead. Spiritualists communicate with the dead. Oh, I was just thinking, like, yeah, the idea of being brain dead, I guess. Like, being someone, you watch TV and you're brain dead. However, okay, whatever. Here's more quotes. It was popularized in an era when anything seemed... This is about spiritualism, the practice of, like, mediums or, like, psychic practitioners would hold seances in which they would communicate to the dead through photographs. And most of the time, these mediums were women. And oftentimes, they were so popular they got to travel and tour the country and host these events and do spiritualism. Anyway, it was popularized in an era when anything seemed possible, when speaking to the dead may have seemed no less strange than communicating across cables or capturing the living on film. Like freezing an image on a photographic plate, the spiritualist's ghost catching was like collapsing time, the past preserved in the present for the future. Spiritualists' embrace of technology was more than a mere analogy. Evidenced in the spiritual telegraph of the Fox sisters, and the spiritual press and media was faster than mainstream presses. So there was like presses writing about spiritualists, and they were like women entertainers who collapsed time and space, and a lot of people were willing to kind of go with it because of the way telecommunications were collapsing time and space at that time. Spiritualists understood their own embodied religious practices and practitioners as media. Mediation was spiritualist practice itself. Spiritualism as a popular religion, in fact, played with and in the contemporary genres of entertainment and belief. Both believers and debunkers aid in strengthening the creation story of spiritualism. It's funny when you think of Keeping Up with the Kardashians, you think about people who love them and hate them, and people who want to expose them as liars, and people who want to celebrate them or identify with them, and how those kind of, the split of those groups create a lot of like, kind of strengthen the creation, their own project. Okay, more quotes. Mediumship offered the possibility of work for young women, which would have paid more than other forms of labor. Most earned money for their work, especially after male breadwinners somehow failed the family. The privileging of female mediums radically changed the binary notions of private and public sphere, the personal and the political, the religious and the secular. Spiritualism was a popular phenomenon that paralleled the rise of a print culture, which in turn gave voice to a noisy, eclectic reform culture. Spiritualism then developed in a context where speakers could find receptive audiences for radical ideas about the relationship of gender to spirituality and the proper place of women in religion. Then I wrote, does Keeping Up with the Kardashians do this? Matriarch worship. As mediums, women took the center stage as speakers. Women's suffrage, sexual victims, marriage laws. Like on television, if the private could be made public, the local also could be made national and international. Spiritualists analogized from cosmology to politics, uniting the spiritual and material. Spiritualists found California as a place of new and fertile ground. Women soon emerged as central to California spirit circles, taking on an even greater prominence than they had in the East. Spiritualists were in the mainstream of their culture while also embodying certain values and qualities associated with the margin. That's amazing. While identifying with the other, spiritualists were also from within, mostly white and middle class. Mediums produced a kind of psychic double play of fractured subjectivities that blurred the boundaries between active speaking subject and passive object. Medium performance was tainted by both its supposed link to femininity and female passivity, and by suspicion that it belonged to the realm of the imaginary. You think of how people say like the Kardashians are so fake, they're famous for nothing, everything's made up, they don't have any talent. Tainted by both its supposed link to femininity and female passivity, and by suspicion that it belonged to the realm of the imaginary. These 19th century subjects let us make contact with a history that troubles easy divisions between the religious and secular, the spiritual and the sexual. Key terms: fundamentalists, Bible-believing Protestants who don't necessarily identify as fundamentalists, and evangelicals. Fundamentalists, that was fundamentalists with a capital F. Fundamentalists with a lowercase f means militantly anti-modernist. And then evangelical means evangelizing Protestants in general, or a subset of Protestants who made a fellowship in opposition to militant fundamentalism in the 40s and 50s. Jerry Falwell. These are quotes from a book on Jerry Falwell. You know, I feel like this is one video, right? I just have to read the whole thing. Like, sometimes you want to clean your room and listen to a long video, or you just want to go to bed to a video. And I feel like I could finish this within maybe the hour mark. So I'm going to keep going. This next part's called Jerry Falwell. I read a book called The Book of Jerry Falwell, and it talked about televangelism in the 80s and business and TV and God, fundraising on TV, like for your church, but it's like scam, you know. Part 1, The Language of Witnessing, Birth of Fundamentalism in Scope's Trials, page 33. It was in my voice, but not my language. I had been inhabited by the fundamental Baptist tongue I was investigating. Insert quote on language, insert Kardashian dictionary pick. The process begins when an unsaved listener begins to appropriate in his or her inner speech the saved speaker's language and its intended view of the world. Language has gone beyond the point of inhabiting the listener's mind to occupying the listener's identity. Numerous poetic and performance features teem on the surface of Campbell's speech. There are verse markers, special codes, figurative language, symbolic and metaphoric parallelism, and appeals to tradition. These features mark the text as an oral performance and indicate a special relationship between performer and listener. In effect, in a coded way, they recognize language as medium, even a subject of religious experience, and they coach the unconverted in the linguistic dimension of conversion. The word works in the conscious mind to bring the conscious mind under conviction. As listeners appropriate the gospel, the Holy Spirit penetrates the conscious mind and becomes another voice, a real person who begins to recast their inner speech. Then I wrote, TV does this. Sound touches and transforms. The word is spirit, and then TV does this too, like with ways, gives you different shows at different vocabularies, different viewpoints, giving you different ways to be and see the world. The membrane between belief and disbelief is much thinner than we think. All I had to do was listen to my witness and struggle to understand him. It drew me across that membrane in tiny ways, so that I began to acquire knowledge and vision and sensibilities to share the experiences of a believer. These quotes are actually not from the book of Jerry Falwell. I think they're from the book When God Talks Back. Generative belief that indisputably transfigures you in your reality, belief that becomes you, comes only through speech. Speaking is believing. Here I am writing this essay, speaking. Transcendental and telescandal in relation to the bakers. Oh, no, this is about Jerry Falwell now. Telescandal. Both Jim and Tammy Faye were accused of extravagant bad taste, of tacky melodrama in their public appearance and performance. Swaggart prostitute scandal tells all in Playboy. Scandals are an extreme instance of the cultural instability that is an integral and productive force in American Protestantism. I think Keeping Up with the Kardashians picks up where the 1980s telescandals left off and switched the story to the view of the prostitutes. Okay. Around the edges of every preacher of renown who taps the narrative force of controversy, there is gathered another force that routinizes scandals. Around the edges of every preacher of renown who taps the narrative force of controversy, there is gathered another force that routinizes scandals. During the 19th century, religious controversies of all kinds became a commercial source of entertainment for the American public. The main stage for the controversies, the nation's newspapers, expanded to include radio and television during the 20th century. Thus, the major narrators of religious controversies were and still are the nation's journalists. Insofar as religious controversies attract mass audiences, they are not simply news, they are also big business. The telescandals show us that an era of relatively unrivaled modern religious and secular dominance in public life was over. Telescandals bring into view the scandalized as well as the scandalizers. The scandals fragmented the illusion that fundamentalism was a homogeneous whole. E-News. Bakers celebrate life like the Kardashians do. The Bakers never used television to represent the traditional rituals. Instead, their television realities, including their TV personalities, broke the screen and expanded into the empirical world. Then it goes into... actually, the rest of this is tarot card. And astrology. It says 7 of Wands. It says 8 of Swords. 6 of Swords. 6 of Wands. 11 of Swords. Justice. 3 of... No, there is no 11 of Swords. It's Justice. 3 of Cups. King of Pentacles. 3 of Wands. Knight of Wands. It must have been a 10 card spread. That's a lot of cards. And then it says Twitter essays. This is not my handwriting and someone else's drawings, it looks like. Maybe it is my handwriting. I don't think so. Alright, well that was that notebook. I finished it. I knew I could do it. So, you know, if you're interested in any of those books, I would really recommend, I guess, first Ghosts of Futures Past and the Book of Jerry Falwell. And then if you're more interested in like evangelicalism, there's a really good one called When God Talks Back. I think another one called Rapture Culture that I mentioned. And then there were other ones in here, right? Not really. There was an essay about secularism. It doesn't matter. All that matters is that we made it to the end of this video. If you're here right now, congratulations. Thank you for your viewership. And I'm hope to just like make more videos like randomly like this where I don't have to edit them or anything. Like I hate editing, honestly, them, because if they're long videos, I know I could probably make them like really flashy and fun, I guess, like other YouTubers, but I also don't want to work that hard on this, and I don't want any like pressure to do anything, so that I just record more. First, you gotta just record more. That's where I'm at. Thanks for listening. I hope this inspired some thoughts. If you have, love to hear anything you have to say about what I said in the comments. If it inspired any ideas for you, I'd love to know. Bye.